Hey everybody, welcome to Snow Talk. This is Wave 3 News meteorologist Brian Good on this Thursday, filling in for the birthday boy, Kevin Harnett, who is out until New Year's week. He's missing on the excitement, or the lack thereof. Alright, I told you guys tonight on Facebook I wanted to hear some of your questions. I told you I'd help answer them. And I'm going to make this a blog post tonight fairly short, so I'm going to get right to some of your questions here, which are interesting. I'm not going to be able to answer all of them. I'm just going to scan through the list real quick. Let's see. Jacqueline Howard says, has Louisville ever had a thunder snow event? Yes. We've had several. One I can recall right offhand personally was when I lived in the Highview, Okolona area. January 17th, 94. The lightning woke me up. The flash did, and then I heard the thunder. It was about 3 in the morning. I remember this, and that's the infamous big snow we had in 1994. It does happen. It takes a tremendous amount of lift in the atmosphere, basically the same requirements you would have for thunderstorms to have thunder snow take place. And we don't usually see those dynamics always line up perfectly here in Louisville, but they do every now and then, and January 17th is a great example of that. Thanks, Jacqueline, for the question. Let's see. Brandon Howergan, I hope I said your name right, Brandon. You want to know about the Kentucky-Louisville game. I'm sure you're not the only one. It's on the 27th. I'm going to go into the end of Christmas week, and I think you'll see kind of my thoughts there on how that's going to play out. So be patient, Brandon. All right, let's see who else. Monica wanted to know if there is really a Santa Claus. Of course. Let's see. We also have Chris Browner, who wanted to know how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop. Great question. It's 14. And then we get down to Aaron Wolf, who wants to know, what is January looking like? The start of it looks cold and active. Can't tell you much more beyond that. It would be just a pure guess, and I don't want to go into guessing mode more than I already do on this blog, apparently. All right, here we go. The latest on Snow Talk. The only thing that's changed today is the normal to date is 1.4 now. But, hey, 3.7, we're still ahead of the game, even though it hasn't snowed measurably, and since mid-November, we're still ahead of the game. 3 items on the board tonight. Christmas Eve, day after Christmas into the 28th. That got Brandon's attention, I'm sure. And the 2nd through the 4th. Notice all 3 of those have to expire, which means nothing major has shown up in the data I'm looking at for snow lovers to get too excited about. But we have at least items we're going to be tracking. Tonight, look at the cloud cover breaking up. And where we see that clearing take place, we're going to drop pretty fast temperature-wise. We're 33 in Louisville, but as the clearing works its way in, we'll see those numbers drop in the 20s. All the flurries now being pushed to the south, and they are fading away. All right, here's our system for this weekend that got so much attention, as you guys know. It's missing its ride to become a bigger system. The system that came through last night and is moving through now, it really should have been back held into the west and become a bigger system and rolled out. And the European showed that. Should have caught that personally, only because the European has a tendency to hold energy back longer than it should have. And the Canadian really got the suppression idea of missing the train, and then the GFS got the great idea of having no support. So but really both of those models did the best on how the system ended up playing out. The European once again failed at its bias of holding the energy too far to the back. Otherwise, it would have been a scenario, based on the meteorology of it, it would have been a snow event for the Ohio Valley. But the model was wrong, and all the data just didn't line up correctly. Now, as we look into the West Coast, look at this, Pacific Storm. That is impressive. Moving in across areas of the Gulf of Alaska, this is a sign of our pattern change coming our way. And we've got a lot to cover on that. Here are the indices. Some of you already know what these mean, so I'm going to go through them fast. European, GFS, experimental, GFS. Now, the AO is Arctic Oscillation. What that means, if it goes negative, where you see that black line, if it goes into the negative territory, that means cold air is readily available into Canada, ready to be grabbed. The NAO is going negative. This is a blocking indicator. If it goes negative, it says we're going to have slower moving storm systems, larger storm systems, some of which can lock in the cold air and block it in place for days, if not sometimes weeks at a time. We have not had that in quite some time. Look at this goes all the way back to earlier on in the fall season. So this is a big change in our weather pattern coming our way when it comes to blocking. But look at the PNA. It has been positive. I mean, if it was positive right now, that would actually be the opposite of these. It would the positive of the PNA would allow for a really cold regime, but instead it's going negative. What does that mean? You still get troughs into the United States. You still get cold air, but it may not be entirely East Coast based. So, based on that idea, I think we're going to get bigger low pressures, deeper ones that are going to track to the north and east. Each one of them is going to have the ability to pull Arctic air right into the United States. What we have to wait and see, though, is the trough going to set up more in the fashion like this, or is it going to be more centralized across areas of the Ohio Valley and then the northeast? We don't really know yet how that's going to play out, but there is going to be a trough in the United States, but I don't think it's going to be initially a big trough that a lot of you are so accustomed to seeing that just overtakes the eastern half of the country. It's not exactly a setup for that, but it is a setup for some cold air to move in and big storms around the base of the trough, and hopefully tap into the subtropical jet and form big snow events that you guys are just dying to see have happen. This is a pattern you want. You will get your big snowstorms, but then you got to worry about which side of the low are you on when they form. And that we just cannot forecast in advance. All we can tell you is the pattern in the future is supportive of that happening. Bigger storms, colder air, but the details, we just got to take it day by day. I'm going to show the GFS. I think overall I did a better job with this weekend system. I know it gets a lot of flack, but it was hard to argue against this situation you just went through. So it's taking a piece of energy Sunday into Monday, moves it to the north up the eastern seaboard. We got a weak wave from the western side of that of rainfall that'll push through. So I got a chance of rain in here on Monday because of that. But there will be a break, but not much of one, because we already feel the effects of this low that's in California you saw diving in that is also going to give us rain by Monday night into Tuesday. And a warming trend as well. And you can see here as we head into Tuesday, we're going to have two areas of low pressure that take shape. We're going to automatically get cyclogenesis that's going to form here in the southeast that'll ride up into the mid-Atlantic. And then here's your big upper low across the Great Lakes. We're in the middle of the transition zone. So we're going to have heavy rain on Tuesday, and it cuts off quick here on the dryness on the backside. We may briefly go to snow, but it probably won't last very long initially. But I think once we get past the low pressures, it curls up to the north. Once we see that happen, I do think we'll eventually see the ability for some cold air on the backside and maybe some snow showers flying through the region. See the jet stream animation here, which takes us all the way through the 28th, how the low pressures move up the eastern seaboard and then they curl up into areas of Canada. So let me show you now back to the GFS to give you an example of what I'm talking about. Once the low goes by, this is Christmas Eve. You see the low pressures now in the Great Lakes, but also notice the reflection here off the eastern seaboard. I think this one will end up being the stronger of the two that'll track northwest, excuse me. We'll be on the backside. It's going to be windy. We're going to get snow showers and snow squalls, but it's not going to be anything historic or anything like that. It's going to be a bigger deal for travel in this area because the wind and the rain, the wind fields, especially here on the eastern side, are tremendous for New York City and Boston. It's going to be just a mess for these guys. And it's going to be all rain, too, not snow. That's just going to be horrible for Christmas Eve. But that's the way it's looking in the northeast. Where it's going to be the backside, the calmer side, but it will be windy with snow flurries. But then the low gets centralized north of New York State. As it does so, it doesn't have a lot of cold air. The cold air really just gets wrapped up into it tight, which allows then for warmer air. Look at the arrows moving right back into the Ohio Valley. This is Christmas Day. Here's our next guy, though, already looking at us. But at least Christmas Day at this point, if this gap holds true, Christmas Day will be a dry day. I've got 40 for a high, but if we can lock in on this gap a little better than we are, we could easily see temperatures well into the 40s for Christmas Day. So that would be interesting to see. And then here's New Year's. Throw this in for fun. This tells you why the model has changed so much. These are the possible tracks on New Year's for the northern branch and for your southern branch features. It's a mess, isn't it? But you can see the general trend overall. There'll still be some cold shots coming through. The subtropical jet is suppressed, but one or two of these may get to the point where they can try to phase, and that's going to be something we're going to have to answer later. It is interesting, though, to see on the ensembles as we head into the first few days of January. To go back to Aaron's question, cross-polar is showing up nice. We may get ourselves locked into a cold pattern that may last quite some time. Seeing the NAO negative and the AO negative is a good sign of that. It's just the PNA being negative is going to throw that storm track off. So it's going to be a challenging forecast, but aren't they all? All right, guys, I'll see you tonight at the news at 11 o'clock, which is less than an hour away.